Grab your cup of coffee. Sit down for a story. Let's all go exploring. Making it after 40. Making it after 40. Making it after 40.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Making It After 40 podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Rodriguez. I am an actor and writer who is still trying to make it after the age of 40. On this show, we explore what it means to be an artist trying to make it as a middle-aged person. This week, our guest is Kim Niemi. Kim is an actress, audiobook narrator, and an advocate to bring awareness for Lynch Syndrome. Similar to prior guests, Kim went through a huge life change before finding her way back to acting in her 40s. For Kim, it was being diagnosed with and surviving cancer that led her back to her acting. And that's where her advocacy for the Lynch syndrome comes in. She has this genetic condition, which apparently, as you'll hear in the interview, is pretty common, and a lot of people have it, and it predisposes you to certain types of cancers. Kim is a delight. And much like her friend Marilyn Bush, who was also a podcast guest, is engaging and funny. I hope you'll find the joy in this story of a woman finding her way and pushing through some really tough lows to only come out the other side doing what she had always wanted to do. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the show. Okay, so today on the show, I have Kim Niemi. Kim is an actress based out of the East Coast you're in Massachusetts, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You know, I haven't spent a lot of time on the East Coast. I've traveled like to Europe and stuff like that. But as far as the East Coast, I've been to Rochester, New York, and that's about it. So I'm not as always like familiar. Like I see it in my mind and it's all one blob.
It kind of is. I think we have this sense that like, no matter which state we're in, we're from all of them because they're so close together.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that always throws me off because I grew up in California and have spent most of my life in California. I forget like on the East Coast, the states are so small and you guys are so close together. It's easy to get from place to place.
It really is. And you don't. So from the opposite perspective, when somebody says like, you know, how long it takes to get anywhere in LA, or you just think like as a kid, it was like, oh, California, like I could go from here to there. And you're like, well, yeah, that's like the entire coast though, or like half the coast. Like it's not like here where you could drive the entire state in an hour and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah. It's like when they were, when the settlers, the colonizers first came to the US, they were like, okay, we're going to divvy this all up, or, you know, we're going to be really careful about how we like lay this out. And then they got to the West Coast. They were like, you know what? We're so tired of all the maps and the drawing line. We're just going to, you take that chunk. They take that chunk and it's fine. It's fine.
Half of it's desert anyway. Just, it's fine.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Kim, I know a little bit about you because your friend Marilyn was on the show, and my understanding is you guys are good friends. And I started, like Instagram stalking you a little bit, and I really loved seeing all the things you're up to, producing your own content, and then you're an advocate for a disease that you have, bringing awareness to that, which is really cool, and not. The disease is not really cool. It's really cool that you're an advocate and using your voice to bring awareness to it. But yeah, so why don't you give us a little bit of your background? Because I would love to learn more about you as well.
Sure.
Give us a little bit of background of how you got to be where you're at now, acting and still, pushing through and making your art.
Well, like so many artists, it's a long, circuitous journey. I grew up in the early 70s watching shows like Benson and looking at Missy Gold and thinking, I want to do that, and what's her name there? Little Vicky Stubing on the Love Boat. I was like, I want to stow away on a cruise ship and then find my uncle or whatever and live this fabulous life. And I want to do that. And then, when you're in grade school and you don't have access to those sorts of things, you go to dance class. That's about as far as you can get. But somewhere along the way, when I was in junior high, I saw a professional production of Annie.
Oh.
And that was it. I was like, oh no, this is the thing. And I was sort of a little past. I was just sort of past where I could have really actually been an Annie, or I probably would have tried much harder to nag my mom to be a stage mom, which she adamantly was against. She was like, I'm not going to do that. So it just sort of started like community theater, and then high school theater, right? And then that became musical theater because I could sing. It was never necessarily the original dream. The original dream was always film and TV, but then I could sing. So it's like, well, here we go. Musical theater, and on to theater school in New York. And and so I went to
where did you go?
AMDA, the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, for those who don't know the nickname. And and I went there, and then like right out of there got a cruise ship job, which is so much of I was recently telling someone a story, and they're like, would you please do a one-woman show, because it's just hilarious. Like, I think it was just me in the telling of it, half drunk, with all the qualifiers of I had the version of a cruise ship, which was unlike nobody else's version of, my friend John goes on Holland America, sees everything in the world, and he, it's amazing. I end up on this little tiny cruise line called Sea Escape, which we affectionately called Sea Mistake. And they went from the port of Miami to the Bahamas and back in a single day. Oh. So it was just like a crack of dawn to midnight sort of day cruise. And you'd stop in, you'd hit the Bahamas, and we would, the rule was you had to be the last people off the boat and then the first people back on. Yeah. So that left us with like an hour to just like basically sit at the port and be like, well, anyway, so, we weren't enjoying the Bahamas in any sense. And not long after that, that was, as you can imagine, short-lived. And then not long after that, I ended up back home, paying my student loans and whatnot. So it was sort of this, bizarro route to getting started professionally. But I did end up doing, I got cast in the production of Nonsense that was happening in the North End for a long time. So it had moved out of a larger theater in the Boston Theater District, but it was still a, professional. I think it was it had to have been an equity production, because working on it got me my eligible performer status, which I think is now EMC, but that was what it was at the time. And, it was a big deal. I made my living as an actor for a year and a half doing that show. I was the swing for 3 out of the 5 nuns.
Oh, wow.
But one month, I'd say, there was a woman in the show who left to go do another show for like a month, and I covered her for a month, 8 performances a week. Mm-hmm. And I didn't love it. I suddenly realized I didn't love that. And I was having these moments where like you're on stage and you're doing this thing that you do the same way every night, and you're suddenly making a grocery list in the back of your head or whatever. Like I had this one moment on stage where I suddenly was like, where am I? What part of the song am I on? Oh crap, and it was like a fraction of a second, but it felt like an eternity. And I was just like, oh no, this is not the dream. And it sort of gave me like a little stage fright for a time as well. So,
but that's an important thing to come to realize, to know. It's like great that you like saw that and accepted that and didn't make yourself like push through, because some people will be like, well, this is what I said I wanted to do. I'm doing it now. I have to stay with it. Yeah.
I mean, I did for a little while. I think in a sense, I got lucky with the fact that when they went to, they transitioned away from the original production and were going to do Nonsense 2, Electric Boogaloo. What was it? It was The Second Coming. And they wanted to keep me as the swing, and I wanted to have like a real part. I wanted to be one, and they were like, no. And of course, at the time, I didn't realize what a compliment that actually is. Because not everyone can do that, but it just wasn't what I wanted. So I walked away from that and started, but the good thing about Nonsense, I mean, there were a lot of good things about it. And I look back on it fondly, certainly,
Yeah.
and met some amazing people that I'm still friends with today. But what was great also was that I could, because I was eligible performer, because I was working at a certain level of income, I got to buy my way into AFTRA. So
Oh,
at the
yeah,
time,
yeah.
SAG and AFTRA were still separate unions. So I
Mm-hmm.
got to buy my way into AFTRA. And so that allowed me to work on TV and film productions that came to town, or to at least, I should say, audition mostly.
Yeah.
But if I did do extra work, I think on one movie, and got paid like the union rate. So that was great.
That is great.
I had the occasional audition, but it wasn't a ton. There wasn't a ton happening here back then. This was like the early 90s. So now there's so much going on. Back then there wasn't so much.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where it was sort of a number of things coming together. It was all the self-esteem issues that come with not getting to do the thing you want to do, right?
Yeah.
A
Familiar
time,
with that.
yes, I don't know, anyone can relate to that. A time when diet culture really ran rampant, especially in the industry, and even at like the smallest my body's ever been, still being sort of told you weren't quite there.
Yeah.
Didn't have the look, when you're like in your early 20s, you always want to be the lead. You always want to be the ingenue. And when you're
Yeah.
not the prettiest pretty one, that's not who you're going to be. So there's
Yeah.
that. And then on top of that, I wasn't working enough to keep up with my union dues. So then I'd be like suspended or not be able, so it just got to be not worth it.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of a little lost at the time. And so I put my dues on suspension. And again, I feel like in so many ways in my life, I've just gotten very lucky with things being done in a way that I didn't know would benefit me later.
Yeah.
So that was one of them, because I suspended my membership, not really understanding what that was, except it just meant I didn't have to pay right now.
Yeah.
And every now and again, I'd like reach out and be like, what do I owe if I want to, come, like if I want access to the hotline again, you used to have to call this hotline to find out what auditions were happening, and you'd sit and listen. And you only had access if you were paid up, and they'd be like, oh, it's $200 or whatever. And I'd be like, oh my God, it might as well have been 2 million.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, can't do it. So I pretty much give up on the acting thing. And I go back to working at Chili's, which I think is going to now be a career. I'm
soul crushing. This is so painful.
It is. But I was actually okay with it. I just thought I'm not cut out for this. It's not what I thought it would be. So it's fine.
It's where your head and heart were at the time.
Yes. Yeah. In the moment, it was fine. And like, honestly, if I couldn't be a superstar in Hollywood, I was a superstar at Chili's. And I was like on the training team. I was like helping make this restaurant, whatever, rising out of the ashes of being, it used to be the restaurant where they sent general managers to die, and I was helping revive it. Yeah. And this whole thing. And then, of course, eventually, as will happen in most jobs like that, where you really pour your heart and soul into something and give them more than is required, they will take advantage of you until you are so burned out that there is nothing else you can do but finally say, you know what? I'm out. Yeah. You've abused me for the last shift. You do not appreciate what you have. And why am I even here? And goodbye. Yeah. So then I decided to do the music thing. Because I'm a singer, right? And people kept saying, you should be a singer. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. How do you just be Celine Dion? How do you do that? I don't know. I don't know how to just go be Whitney Houston. Like, how do you get a recording career? I don't know. I couldn't do the other thing. I couldn't do acting. What do you mean be a singer? Okay. But at some point I started, I got sucked into sort of kicking and screaming by a friend into the country line dance scene.
Oh, okay.
And so fell in love with country. I know. I'm sorry. This is a crazy ride, and we
wonderful.
will get to the present day very shortly.
It's wonderful. I love it.
But I ended up falling in love with country music. And we would go to these clubs where there were live country bands. And so I was like, okay, maybe that's actually the thing that I didn't know I needed. So I started writing country songs. Like, I'd never really been a songwriter before, but I was like, oh, maybe this is a thing. I'd always been a writer, but hadn't applied it to much. I had this identity that was bestowed on me by my 6th grade teacher, honestly. Anybody who thinks teachers don't have impact on their students, hear this. I have never once questioned the identity of writer because my 6th grade teacher cultivated that in me and handed it to me like a gift.
Oh,
And it has
that's so
always been
wonderful.
something I've been completely sure of. And
Yeah.
so I've just been able to use that in various ways. And so songwriting became a thing, and singing. And so I just kind of, it was a slow progression, probably over a good decade or so. But I started working with a couple different bands. I fronted like a wedding band. I did a couple acoustic duos where other people played guitar for me and I sang the covers or whatever.
Yeah.
But then also ended up in a couple country bands. And so I was like writing my own music on the side, singing with these country cover bands, and sort of bizarrely in like the folk singer songwriter circuit as well, because that's where you mostly can do your own music without people getting frustrated with you. Because like at the line dance clubs, they just want to hear, Reba McEntire and Kenny Chesney. And they're like, what's your weird song? I don't know that song. So, we could get away with a little bit of that, but not much. So I'd go out to like, Club Passim and be like, here's a bunch of music that's whatever. And people, were at least forgiving of it, even if they were like, oh, I don't know. Sure.
Yeah.
So I was trying to work on putting out an album for myself. There was a lot of things fell apart in that process, sadly. So the album has yet to ever be finished. So it felt like, thank you. It felt like
Let's have a moment for that album.
Someday it will rise again. But it was like artistic heartbreak after artistic heartbreak. And you start to feel like, where am I supposed to be? I don't know. And I'm just following whatever. And I'm working crazy day jobs. Like I had, when I left Chili's, I ended up in medical transcription for a time.
A lot of actors do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was a dental assistant for a little while at a root canal practice.
Yeah.
I was a ghostwriter for a time. Like I just sort of was drifting into whatever seemed like it might catch or pay well. And it just, it was like, but I really had no plan and I wasn't making much progress. And so now fast forward finally to 2013.
Okay.
And, I'm in my early 40s. I'm sort of not really doing the singer-songwriter thing anymore. This was after the album has fallen apart. I'm doing the ghostwriting thing.
Yeah.
I don't really know what's next. And then suddenly I have cancer. And it was a surprise, but not, because at the time, we had another family member who had been diagnosed previously, and they were young enough that all of the doctors on that case were kind of like, we're going to do some genetic testing because it's unusual to have this type of cancer at your age. So let's do some genetic testing. And that was where Lynch syndrome was first heard by anyone in my family. And all of a sudden we're like, hey, everyone should really be tested to figure out where this is. And what kind of history is there? And it's like, my grandmother who had colon cancer, I mean, in her later years of life, not super unusual, but still, that's a link. Who else had what? My aunt had uterine cancer that sort of got discovered before it became anything. She was having a hysterectomy. She luckily basically got saved from what would have become ovarian cancer.
Oh, wow.
Because when they took everything, she didn't really want them to. She wanted to keep her ovaries because she's all worried about like menopause.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we're taking everything. And then once they're doing pathology on that, they're like, and we're glad we did.
Yeah. Because
there's, early cancer cells or whatever. So I suddenly, now I've had symptoms for like a year that I passed off as perimenopause. And I didn't have healthcare at the time. I was just kind of using what had previously been told to me to do, which was like using hormone cream from Whole Foods and whatnot.
Right.
Which actually probably made things worse, but who knew?
We always try to like find our own solutions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I there wasn't much I could do. I couldn't afford health insurance.
Yeah.
So I hadn't been to a doctor in like a year, and I just was like, well, this is annoying, but it's whatever. And then so I finally had health insurance again, but had been putting off being looked at. And then things got bad enough that I was I was bizarrely working at Chili's again. I had gotten laid off from the medical transcription place. This is decades later. I don't have the energy for this. I'm waiting tables at a Chili's where one of my former Chili's friends from like the early 90s is now the general manager.
Oh my God.
And I'm just like coming back to wait tables in my 40s like, oh my God, I am a sitcom dying to be written.
Yeah.
And he's, he takes pity on me. Come, because I got laid off. He's like, come work at the restaurant, just whatever. I'm like, okay. I called out of work on Valentine's night because I was like, I cannot do it. Like I am, not to be overly graphic, but like just bleeding will not stop.
Oh my
And this
God.
is enough already. And I was dealing with it constantly. And I called a doctor from my like new health insurance info. And when I called his office, this secretary was so great and so knowledgeable. She was like, she said, he's covering at like the local hospital tonight. He's working the ER over there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to call over to him because I think he's going to want to see you tonight.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Oh
Great, but also scary, right? But let's do this because you're right. Something's up.
She knew. Her red flags went off.
None of this is normal.
Yeah,
you've been passing it off as it's fine, but I'm here to tell you, not so much.
Yeah.
So that was where I just began chasing down this diagnosis, and he was great. This guy, old school guy, steered me away from things like laparoscopic surgery. When it came time to discuss doing a hysterectomy, he's like, yeah, no, when you have cancer inside there, you're not gonna, because the way they do that is a whole different process that allows for things to escape. And he was like, we can't do that. And I was like,
yeah, because they want to cut margins and they want to make sure it's clean.
All the things.
I
exactly.
have a cousin who had some cancer and
gotcha.
There were issues because they didn't do big enough margins. And so they ended up with more tumors. And
yes. Well, exactly. Because the other family member that had the early case, they did laparoscopic. Because again, with endometrial or uterine cancer, the assumption is if you take all the parts out, as long as it hasn't already spread to other areas, if you do a hysterectomy, that's considered fairly curative.
Yeah.
So they weren't concerned. So it wasn't like there was no chemo, there was no radiation. It was just, this is the procedure. Well, because they did it laparoscopically, or maybe not, maybe just because of whatever, there were like lymph nodes, I'm assuming, or cells that just weren't. So 2 years later, as I'm being diagnosed, this family member now has a recurrence.
Oh no.
So there's two of us going through it at the same time. And and so as soon as I said, well, we know there's Lynch in the family, and they were like, yeah, let's test you, but we're pretty sure we know what we're going to get here. And so, not surprisingly, I also came up positive. And so there's been a variety of family members who have tested for this, some who just haven't. Not everyone wants to, and that's a thing. So it's been an interesting journey with that. I mean, I look at, part of what I really only just recently learned. I went to this Living with Lynch sort of like weekend. It was like a meet other people going through this Lynch syndrome journey, people who are either survivors or what they call previvors, meaning they're Lynch positive, but they've not yet had any kind of cancer.
Yeah.
And meet each other so you feel less alone. And then also hear from some doctors at local hospitals, do some just fun activities together, and then also learn how to advocate and learn how to like be a voice on social media and that sort of thing to get the word out. Because what I didn't even realize until this weekend, which was back in September, is that Lynch is not rare.
Oh, wow.
It's 1 in 270.
Why haven't we heard of it?
Exactly. It's 1 in 279 people are Lynch positive, and nobody's heard of it. And a lot of doctors, especially going back to, 2013, a lot of doctors hadn't heard of it. And I think it's just because you look at and you just assume, well, family history is family history. And we already know that that's a thing. We don't have to look at what is the reason. But it's so important to know that because you want to have that knowledge that allows you to be proactive.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe just for the listeners who probably most of them don't know what Lynch syndrome is. Maybe, based on what I've seen on your social media, my understanding is Lynch is, uh, uh, it basically sets you up to be more, how do we say it? More likely to get cancer. Or I don't
Sure.
know. Maybe you could speak on it more
Pre-
eloquently than I just did.
Predisposed is the word I use. Yeah.
There you go. Predisposed. And is it
It's
one type of cancer, or is it like certain types of cancer?
so it's a gene mutation.
Okay.
And there are a few different types. The one I have is MSH6. There are some other variations. And depending on the mutation you have, sort of lets you know which of the cancers is most likely to be an issue for you. But overall, the cancers that fall under Lynch are colorectal is a big one, endometrial and ovarian also. Skin cancer. And I think those are the main ones, honestly, to worry about, because those are I'm thinking of all the people I see and what I see them for. And those are the things. So it's like, when they say, if there's a history of colon cancer in your family, you're supposed to go, everyone's supposed to go at the age of 50, right? After 50, get your colonoscopy. If you've had someone in your family who had colon cancer, it's usually 10 years prior to their diagnosis.
Yes.
And that could be 40, that could be 50 if they were 60. But if you find out that you're Lynch positive because someone had it in their 30s, you might start getting colonoscopies in your 20s. Because it is such a it's such a preventable cancer.
Yeah.
Because while they're in there doing a colonoscopy, when they see a polyp, they're just like, boop, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And you're good. It's only when you let things go because you don't know it's there. Because nobody's looking, right?
What do they say? The saying is an ounce of prevention. This is what that they always say. And I actually,
a pound of cure.
Yes, yeah. And when I used to work at a building management office, we had a company called Longevity, and I don't know if they're still around. It'd be great if they are, but they started it because the man who started it, he lost his wife to cancer. And I feel terrible because I can't remember which type of cancer. I believe it was breast, but it might have been ovarian. Actually, I think it was ovarian. And so he started this, and they go to organizations and they offer for a very low cost, like let's say $60 or $80.
Yeah.
They bring all the people in, all the people who can do the ultrasound scans, and they scan all your internal organs, your stomach. They look at your liver. They look at your gallbladder.
Mm-hmm.
And they just look at that because they find that if they can just help people see if there's something going on, then they've helped people detect cancer early, or even just finding gallstones, and people can go deal with gallstones. But I mean, it's such a small, it's such an easy thing, and I wish our healthcare system would allow for that more. But
yes,
yeah.
No, is that okay? No, is this something that I've seen Ian Somerhalder talking about?
I don't know.
And his wife, Nikki, whatever her name is. Okay.
Maybe.
I feel like, but I've heard of similar things, if not this exact thing. So
yeah. These guys are based out of they're based out of LA, and his son now is also running it with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if it's in LA, it probably is the thing that Ian Somerhalder is talking about.
Yeah.
But no, it is wonderful. It's actually nice to hear that it's so affordable, because I haven't looked into it because I'm not aware of it being here. And I'm covered to do the things I need to do.
Yes.
But yeah, it is. It matters so much to be able to be proactive. And I'm thrilled to be in a state where we have what we need here. Mm-hmm. We were sort of the precursor to Obamacare. So that's how our healthcare is run here. So everyone can get what they need. And, not all states are like that.
Yeah.
And even with Obamacare, there's things that have been changed or whatever. And it's just not always as simple as it really should be. And the things that aren't covered are mind-boggling, or the times that you have, even for me, I mean, when I first had, I think after my surgery, before I was starting chemo, my doctor wanted me to have a PET scan, which is just like this, similar to what you're talking about, just that comprehensive full body scan that looks for cancer cells, and they would not cover it. And here's my surgeon, who's the expert in this, telling them why, and they're just like, nope.
Oh, that.
And
Oh,
it's just so
makes me
infuriating. It's
so
like,
mad. It makes me
why?
so mad. I have
Yeah,
to laugh because it
right.
infuriates
Because
me.
otherwise you have to punch things.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, so then you get
So,
your cancer diagnosis, you get your
yes.
surgery,
Yes.
and so then were you? I guess you go through this whole cancer journey. At what point did you find your way back to your craft? And were you working at Chili's this whole time?
So I had to stop working at Chili's when I got diagnosed and when I knew
Yeah.
what a journey I was going to be on. I didn't even know initially. You want to talk about just gaps in the system? My surgeon, I mean, as much as he went to bat for me on this PET scan, he did not realize, I guess, that when he told me in the hospital that I was going to need radiation or chemo or anything else, that I was like, I don't know, not fully conscious yet or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just did not filter through. So 8 weeks later, as I'm like going from like my final follow up from my surgery, he tells me, well, now you're going to meet with the radiologist. And I was like, the who now? What? And he's like,
Ah,
yeah, you need radiation. I was like, okay, that's new. Cause I had taken 8 weeks leave of absence from Chili's
yeah.
to recover from this hysterectomy, but I didn't know I needed anything else. So now it's like, okay. And so I go to the radiation guy and he says, well, first you're going to see this one for chemo and then you'll see me. And I was like, wait, I need chemo?
Oh my
Like
God.
I had no idea. And
Yeah.
the only other blueprint I had for this was the previous family member who just had a hysterectomy and was fine. I mean,
Yeah.
2 years later, they weren't. So I'm grateful we did it all at once. But at the time, I was just like, I'm assuming hysterectomy is the solution. And then suddenly I'm lined up for now months and months of my life to be doing all this other treatment. So
Oh my
it
God.
was, let's see, it was July through like November that I did chemo.
Oh
And then
wow.
had like a week off or something. And then from like end of November, just after Thanksgiving, through to like mid-January the following year.
Oh my gosh.
So it's about a year before you start to sort of feel like maybe you're almost your normal self again
Yeah.
because you've put your body through so much that you're just recovering. And so at this point, like I
That
couldn't go back to Chili's because it was certainly during treatment, it was too much. It was too strenuous a job, too physical a job, around too
yeah.
many people.
Yeah.
When you're in an immunocompromised state, they were like, no,
No.
you cannot work at Chili's.
Yeah. People go sick everywhere.
Yeah, I
People
was
go
doing a
every
little
rather.
no, exactly. I was doing a little bit of ghostwriting and then I was like collecting disability and whatever.
Yeah.
And so then you know, like so that year passes whatever and it was I'd have to look up exactly the year, but everyone on Facebook suddenly was talking about the two Boston Marathon movies that were in town shooting. So
Oh.
Patriots Day and Stronger were both in town on top of each other shooting the movies about the Boston Marathon. And everybody I was Facebook friends with from like back in the day and whatever was suddenly posting about how they were working on it, whether it was extra work or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just suddenly had this thought of like, why am I not doing that? Like,
Yeah.
this isn't the first movie to be here in recent years, but it was just suddenly this volume of posting that I was seeing. And every now and again, I'd see somebody talk about working on a movie, but it was all of a sudden, it was like I couldn't get away from it. And I just thought, why did I ever stop doing this? And this was the original thing. This was always the dream. It wasn't theater.
Yeah.
It wasn't whatever. Why did I let people make me feel like I was too fat when I was 125 pounds?
Yeah.
Why did I let anybody make me feel like I wasn't good enough or that it wasn't a good choice or whatever? Like, why did I listen to anyone? I just went through hell
Uh-huh.
and survived it. And I am no longer going to listen to any other voices in my head that have been generated by other people.
Yes. I love it.
Fuck that.
Yes. That's right.
What the? I was like, this is the only life I get. And I just gave up 2 years of it to recover from this thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, here we go. And this was where
Yeah.
like, again, I got lucky with just setting myself up in a way I didn't know I was setting myself up for, because then I called. So once again, I'm reaching out to the union and I'm like, oh, SAG-AFTRA, weird. Okay. And I'm like, I'm like, when did that happen? Because I had been completely out of the loop. I was all about music stuff. I was like, I could tell you everything Reba McEntire was doing. SAG-AFTRA, I hadn't heard of it. And so all of a sudden I'm a SAG member. And I don't want to, grandfathered in is like a bad term. I don't know what but it's like, I have the legacy. I'm there. I'm in there as a national member. I don't have to pay the initiation fee. Like, I'm like,
oh, what a
welcome
blessing.
back. Oh, the angels. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, because being a member of SAG is like, when you're an actor, that's the thing you dream of becoming. And even back when I joined AFTRA, it was like, but how do I get to be SAG?
Yeah.
How many vouchers and what do you have to do? And it felt so impossible. And now I'm like, oh my God, I have a freaking SAG card. What?
So then you jumped back into background work after that. Yeah.
Yes, I did. I went, and I also, I hadn't been in it for about 25 years. A lot of things had changed.
Yeah.
There had been no internet. My last headshots were black and white. And so once again, the universe just sort of gave me everything I was looking for, because I think I just like followed all the casting offices on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately, here's Boston Casting with Angela Perry's doing a, $50 intro to the acting business workshop. And I'm like, yep, doing that. Because I need to know. I don't even know. What are the websites? Who do I talk to? What do I do? Great. I'm in. And then the one name I did remember that I knew was like, this is the guy, was Peter Kelly. So around these parts, Peter Kelly for years back in the day taught at one of our bigger casting offices here, CP Casting.
Okay. And
I remembered him because, I'd auditioned for him a couple times, but he taught the like on-camera film classes at the studio. And I had always wanted to take his class, partly because during one of my many day jobs, I worked at the business office of our local hospital where I had worked in high school, and then came back as a grown-up and was like, let me work here for a minute until I know what else I'm doing. And one of the women there was like the great aunt of a woman named Laura Bonarigo, who for a long time played Cassie Carpenter on One Life to Live.
Okay.
I don't know if you were ever One Life to Live girl. And so I was just like, that was like too close. It was like, oh my God, she's on a soap opera. She's like one of the bigger people on the soap opera, and she's from here, and I work with her freaking aunt, and why isn't that me? And oh my God, and how did she do it? And like I would go into like CP Casting for the occasional audition, and they had their little brochures, and she had like a testimonial on the brochure, and Peter Kelly is the best thing since sliced bread. And I was like, oh my God, I have to be, and I couldn't afford to take classes. But so here I am now in my mid-40s, coming back, ready to conquer the world. And I follow the casting offices on Facebook. And so I get Boston Casting, and I have CP Casting. Peter Kelly's going to be in town this weekend for a 1-weekend workshop. And he has a few coaching sessions left. And they're, whatever discount price. And so and I was like, oh my God. So now I'm like, okay,
this is your chance.
Now I'm going to take a coaching session with Peter, because this is a sign and whatever. And so I was just like, okay, sitting with him. I've never done like a private coaching session in my life. I vaguely remember him from back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't know if he remembers me at all. It doesn't matter. And I'm just like, here's what I want to know. I know I'm rusty, but like, do I suck? Do I have a nerve of even attempting this? Like, what do I need to do to get ready? Where do I take class? Who's doing headshots? What do I tell me all the things? And also like, because he was like, what do you want to do? Do you want to just like talk shop? Do you want to do scene study? I was like, a little bit of both. He's like, yeah, we can totally do that.
Awesome.
So we read a scene. He's like, you don't suck. You're rusty, but yes, you're going to be fine. And then he gave me all kinds of other info, websites to look at, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I started, he hosts these on-camera workshops where he'll have like 8 to 10 actors come in over a weekend. And on Saturday, you read over a scene with your scene partner. And then on Sunday, you shoot the scene. Oh, and he shoots it. And it's like you're making a short film or something. Oh, and wow. It is basically what it is like to be on set. That's what he's imparting to people. Kind of what he always was imparting to people. And the beauty of that is that he's a guy who was for years, until God, just 5 minutes ago, has spent the past 14 years on set with Chris O'Donnell working on NCISLA because he's Chris O'Donnell's acting coach.
Oh.
So he's been out in LA and then just commuting back for
Yes.
these weekends.
Aw.
And he's like, here's what it's like. And this is the pace. And here's what it's like when there's a camera 6 inches from your face and you have to emote and you only get a few takes because we don't have time.
Yeah.
And you're just a day player anyway. So you better be ready. So all of those things that you otherwise would never have, because you can do scene study and emotion work and whatever all day long. But if you get to set and freeze because here's a camera right in your face.
Yeah.
And you don't understand that it's not about you because you're not Chris O'Donnell, and whatever,
Yeah.
you don't know what to do. And so he would give us that. So like, it's one of the, if not the most important classwork I've done, because it is the one thing that prepared me for like, when I finally did book my first co-star, I was like, that's the one, I don't have to be afraid of any of that.
Yeah.
I can be nervous and afraid about so many things, but not about, I know what to do.
Yeah. Well, what a gift. I mean, I don't think anybody is, I mean, maybe there are classes that are doing that out here in LA and I'm just not aware, but I don't think any classes are doing it to that degree where it's like, hey, I'm taking you under my wing. Let me show you the way. Certainly there are lots of on-camera classes, but you've got like a little camcorder on a tripod. It's not like a set at all. We're all sitting there watching each other, which is fine. Those classes are great. I love those classes. I get so much out of that.
Absolutely.
But there is something to be said for what you're describing of having that experience, because right now, the only way that I know how to get that experience right now is to create it with your friends and to start shooting with your friends, or you find the friend who has the DP who can get the rental, and then you create your own sets, which, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. That's great and wonderful.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said to have that like super safe classroom environment where you're not shelling out thousands of dollars just to like,
oh, for sure,
experiment on your own. You have a professional showing you. That's wonderful.
Well, and the other thing too is that when you're doing your own content, that's great if you're someone who, like, I could do that now.
Yeah.
Go back 7 years when I was just coming back. I was like, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I have no contacts. I have no anything. So it was great to be able to do this and just sort of meet the few actors that were doing it, in the same class environment. Those become your friends. And then you can work your way up to doing your own content from there because you see it being done. You're like, oh, this is actually possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would have been lost if it was just like, go out and find people and make a movie. I would have been like, what do you mean by that? I don't know how.
It took me a long time to figure out how to do it on my own too. So yeah.
Yeah. The people who know how to do it are just like, go do it. And you're like, I don't, but how though?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
That's wonderful. So then Peter Kelly gave you these tools.
Yep.
And then were you just off to the races? Did you feel like you were ready to start looking for representation or?
Oh God, no.
Yeah.
Oh God, no. Because I'm such a late bloomer in every way. No, and I'm also just like, I have to earn it and I have to, let me get, I was all about, so I was happy to do extra work. I was thrilled to just do all the extra work I could get my hands on and scene study stuff. And he was certainly not the only teacher. There have been other wonderful teachers along the way. James Dumont, another just excellent set of skills for working with the frame of the camera. Understanding how to manage your eye lines and where the world is, within the confines of the frame of the camera. Cause that's another thing is if you're looking too far out of bounds, it's a whole, different look. Yeah. And then, another friend who started sort of an acting studio where she brought Jamie Tennille, who's a wonderful actress who brought in, she created a studio called Actor Playbook where she just brings in different guest teachers in a number of realms, improv, accents, scene study, self-tape. So there's all of those sorts of skills that you can learn from different people and different voices. And so I just started, it was extra work for a long time. I don't remember if I made a conscious choice. Like, I doubt I did. I doubt I made any kind of conscious choice to be like, let me start auditioning. I don't even know how you would do that. I think it was just that at some point, maybe because I'd done a couple workshops, there were a couple, SAG franchised, the local casting directors are holding a casting workshop and you'd go in and it's like a one-line audition and they're just going to give you an adjustment and you'll do it, and then they'll give you feedback on how well you took the adjustment or not. And that's just them getting to see you without there being an actual audition in place. And I think that's probably what got me my first couple auditions with lines, and so at a certain point, when you start getting enough of those, then I started to say, okay, maybe it's time to let the extra work fade into the background.
Yeah.
Because you do at some point have to make that decision.
Yeah.
And it was, it took a minute, but I also, by then I was doing audiobooks, because that was the other thing I sort of did along the way.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you how you jumped into that, because I know that's something that I was interested in doing as like, my day job. But it's, it's competitive for sure.
It is.
Yeah. So how did you jump into that?
I shouldn't say it. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's a lot easier to do than I thought. Although maybe, now I think there's God knows there's plenty of work to go around.
Yes.
There are also a lot of narrators. The way I did it initially was I worked with this woman. I'm always like, who's the coach? Where's the coach? How do I do this? A friend had told me about.
I'm the same way. I want somebody to hold my hand. Hold my hand,
I do.
Please.
Somebody knows, and I've Googled. I had already Googled it many times over the years and was like, I don't know what to do. Who do I talk to? Who are the people? A friend introduced me to this Facebook group called The Global Actor.
Okay.
And the woman who runs that is Elise Arsenault. And she at the time was doing small group coaching for kind of anything you wanted, just creative coaching. If you're working on, finding a manager or an agent, or if you want to work on scene study, if you want to work on audiobooks, whatever. But audiobooks were her sort of area of expertise because she'd been doing them for a few years. So I did some, every other week, small group coaching with her, and just learning how to take the skills I already had as an actor and apply them specifically to audiobooks. And when we got to the point where both she and I felt like, I think I'm there. I think it's time to make a demo. I think it's like, I just, to put myself out there. She's like, great. Here's a place to reach out to that I'm happy to refer you to.
Yeah.
And it was one, it's one of the larger distribution companies and publishers of audiobooks out there, which is Tantor Media. And I've been working for them ever since.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And again, lucky. Prior to COVID, they had 6 booths, I should say, in their studio and office space in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. And I used to commute down and stay for the duration of the book, and then go home and record in their studios. And it was great. And then COVID happened. And I had never thought that I might ever have a home studio, because I was like, I don't see how that would work.
Yeah.
In my situation, I live in my mother's house. I have 2 siblings also here, and it was just kind of like, I just don't even know how, and how would I have the money, and it's so much. Well, by then Elise had sort of transitioned into this entire audiobook specific course. She wasn't doing small group coaching anymore. She was doing more of an overarching sort of self-guided course.
Okay.
But with her input and feedback along the way. And the wonderful thing is that her husband is an engineer.
Oh,
so he
that's great.
Does all of this post-production stuff. He was the one I did my demos with them. She directed me and he recorded everything. But so he knew how to tell us, all of us in the course, there were many of us who were like, please give us your knowledge. He's like, here's how to set up a space to be soundproof. Here's the kind of microphone you need. It's any, you can choose whichever one you want, but here's the type of microphone.
Yeah.
Here are the things that work best. Here are the things that aren't so great. Here's, you need an interface. You might need a preamp. That's a personal choice. All these different things. And so, again, I had someone who could hold my hand, who could listen to the space. When I got online with him, was like, do I sound set up? He's like, I think you're set up. He goes, I think you should reach out to them and say, and send a sample and get their approval. Because I'd already been working for Tantor at that point, but they were like, when your home booth is set up, let us know and we'll send you a book.
Yeah. And
so now I've been doing this since March of 2020 here in my little closet, which I wish you could see it. I'll send you a picture later.
Yeah, send us a picture.
And I should stop being amazed that I accomplish things, because I always accomplish things one way or another, but I'm always just kind of like, I can't believe I'm doing this, because there was a moment where I thought I could never.
Yeah.
It would never happen. So audiobooks are the day job. And just in the past few months, I've gotten representation.
What I keep hearing is that you are just really good at pivoting. You're really good at taking whatever life throws at you and just making it work. And it sounds like it's brought you a lot of success in a lot of different things. I mean, are you a megastar? No, but most people aren't who are
Sure. No,
actors.
exactly.
We are the
Exactly.
middle class, the journeyman actor, and
Yep.
and with all the different challenges that you've faced in your life, you've really taken each step in stride and made it work for you and figured out how to make it work for you if it wasn't working for you, or finding the new
Yeah.
thing that will work for you. And I love that you went on this whole journey and then you came back to what you love.
Yeah.
You're not alone in that journey of being distracted by what other people want to put on you. So many of us have.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there was particularly something brutal about the 90s and
Mm-hmm.
the early 2000s for women and maybe men too. I don't know. I can't speak for men, but that
Sure.
in the industry in particular, that just squashed a lot of dreams that didn't need to be squashed because it was we were
Yeah.
trying to make people fit into this mold that was so unrealistic. You look at some of the actors in the TV shows that came out back then and you're like, oh my God, they look so frail. What is
Right.
happening?
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I mean, it's always been a brutal industry, and it's still, it's getting better, but it's still in so many ways
Yeah.
brutal. But especially I think for younger people, like I'm grateful. I did not know myself well enough, and I did not have the stamina or the understanding of what even networking was.
Yeah.
And without the internet, I don't know how people did it, because with the internet, you can meet anybody and find out anything.
Yeah.
Before that was a thing, I just don't know what people did. And I was just
Yeah.
always kind of feeling lost and alone and never felt good enough or enough. And, it does sometimes take, I mean, I always try to say, please don't wait to get cancer to find your self-esteem or to make a move or to do it, do the thing. But it's easier said than done. And sometimes you need to go through the journey. I had no life experience in my early 20s. I was the oldest in my family. So I was the most sheltered, the oldest child of 5, was the most sheltered. I hadn't been anywhere. I mean, I went to New York for theater school, and that was the furthest I'd ever been from home. And I just knew nothing that I could bring to the table.
Yeah.
In so many ways. But now I feel okay, well, this wasn't necessarily what I dreamed of, because I dreamed of being a child star, which is a whole other thing. But I mean, this is going to be so much more gratifying.
Yeah.
To be able to bring the things that I've experienced to auditions and to roles and to whatever I'm creating, to have a point of view.
And so much better because you have that experience. And I'm sure casting directors and directors will tell you that what you bring to it is all those years of experience and the fight and the journey that you've been through. Mm-hmm. It makes you a better actor, a better artist.
I remember reading, I think it was in Backstage, somewhere early on when I was coming back, where I just thought, am I crazy to do this? And somebody had posted an article about all the people that come back to this career in their 40s and 50s because they've raised their kids and sent them off to college, and now they've got the time again.
Yeah.
And casting loves a new face.
Uh-huh.
Casting loves it when you show up out of nowhere and they're like, who are you? And you're good because you've got life experience and you're not nervous or you're not what, you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, that's all I needed to hear. Yeah. I mean, I'm not coming back in the same way. I don't have kids, whatever, but I took a detour and now I'm back, and it's the same idea.
Yeah, it's absolutely the same idea. So for your family, how did they feel about you jumping back into it? Have they been supportive of all the steps that you've taken? Because you've had a lot of little mini careers. So have they been your cheerleader the whole way, or has that been a challenge?
No, well, I mean, certainly when I was younger, it was oh God, really? That's what you want to do? Okay. You really aren't going to go to a 4-year college where you could learn about acting, but also get a degree. Okay. But then this time around, my mom was kind of no, I think you should go back to acting. And I was like, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Cause I was expecting resistance. That is not a lucrative, career move or the same thing. It's sort of all the same arguments that you could have made back then still apply. But she was, I think, it's just sort of, Yeah, when you get to a certain point, especially I think if she's seen me over the years just
Yeah.
struggling so hard with so many different things, it's like, you know what? Follow your bliss already. Yeah.
Oh, that's
You
wonderful.
were always good at that, and why? Yeah, and you should have just kept with it or whatever, and it's fine that you didn't. But so yeah, do it now.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
I'm happy to hear that you have the support.
yeah,
Well, what would you recommend for other actors or artists who are coming up in their craft, whether they're young or if they're, I think especially in this case, like people who are looking to make a change in their
yeah.
midlife. What advice or what words would you have for them?
That it's not, you're not too late. It's never too late. If you want to do this, you are always right on time. There is room for you. Don't wait for permission. Go out and do whatever. I mean, I'm doing the stupidest things right now on Instagram,
Yeah.
but it counts. Like people are, we started doing this Real Actresses thing like for fun because
Yeah.
in November there was like yet another guru. I'm part of, a group that was hosting a Reels challenge.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, let's do some Reels and let's come up with this thing. And then, I mean, we didn't even do it in November. It took on a life of its own and
Yeah.
it was delayed and now it's a thing. But like, yeah, do the thing you want to do. Because, it does go by so fast.
Yeah.
And so many people say the time's going to pass anyway. Start now so that when the time passes, you're at least a few steps further than you were. And the other thing I would say, I think just to anybody, whether young or old, work on your mindset and your self-esteem.
Yeah.
I am, especially those of us in our 40s and beyond, we grew up in a time where we had a lot of bad messaging coming at us. There's still a lot of bad messaging, but I feel like there are people now more and more trying to combat the bad messaging about what women have to be or should be. Diet culture in particular is a big sticking point for me because I came back at a time where I was like, well, I'm the oldest I would have imagined being. I mean, I was in my 40s, but I was like, I don't know. This might be crazy. I'm the fattest I've ever been. I don't know. Maybe it's crazy. But then again, I can be a character actor and that's fine. Happy to, but understand that aside from just unraveling whatever messages you got growing up about enoughness, you have to really be able to look at, there are a lot of casting directors out there, a lot of agents, people on Instagram who will tell you the casting puzzle is just that. It's a puzzle. It's a random thing. It's not about you. You're not being rejected. It's not like so many of my acting friends. And I absolutely fall victim to it myself plenty of times where you think that it's about you and you failed in some way or they don't like you. You take it personally. We have to work so hard, and it's worth it to work hard enough to combat that, to know that what you bring to the table is valuable and that when it's not you, it's just because you weren't the puzzle piece in this puzzle, but they put you aside for the next one or to build the puzzle around you down the road.
Yeah.
Because they're taking note, and you have to get to a point where you really do understand and believe that, or you're just going to be eaten alive. You're going to always be so upset because it is a business of infrequent wins.
Yeah.
In so many ways, Yeah. I think it's really important to do everything you can to be rock solid in self-confidence.
Yeah. I think that is super important. I think what you just said has so much value because that is something so important for actors and many artists in various fields to remember. It's not always because they're rejecting you. It's just, you just weren't the right fit and had nothing to do with you or your talent.
Yeah. And I see so many people take it in, and instead of saying, well, all right, I'm bummed it wasn't my time. I would have loved that role.
Yeah.
And that's a fine thing to think and to feel. But I then sometimes when it spirals into, and it's because I wasn't pretty enough, or it's because I'm too fat to be XYZ. And that makes me bananas and sad because that's not what they believe. It's what they've been told to believe over a very long period of time. And I get it. We've heard it our whole lives. It's not you can't change that mindset in a minute.
Yeah.
I just want to put it out there for people to be thinking about working against that inclination to immediately jump on the bandwagon that's been created by other voices besides yours.
Yeah.
You don't have to believe them.
Yes, I love that. I joked with Marilyn. I like to tell myself I was too pretty. So in your face, world.
And
I
that's a
didn't get it
thing.
because
Yeah.
I was too pretty. So there.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, they did not want Bette Midler to play the role of Mary Magdalene in Jesus Christ Superstar on Broadway because she was too good a singer. That is, I don't know if that's mythology, Broadway mythology, but I've heard that since I was back in my theater days, that was always the thing, was they didn't hire her because she was too good, and that part's only supposed to, be a moment or whatever.
Yeah, they don't want it to upstage. I believe it.
No, and sometimes it's as stupid as because the lead actor is really short, and even though on TV he might look like he's tall because they cast people around him that create that illusion. If you're too tall or too short, or everyone else they've hired is already blonde, we don't need one more blonde. It's so dumb, the things that, and honestly, I've read stories recently too, where it's like, we don't want to waste you on this tiny little bit. We're going to wait because we think there's something coming down the pike where you're going to be a recurring guest star or a series regular. We want to give you something that is worthy of what you bring to the table. I've heard casting directors say this, and I'm like, I believe it.
I like that. I want to take that one home with me. I'm going to put that one in my pocket.
No, you don't know what's working for you behind the scenes. I mean, everyone here last night was watching Michael Toe and losing our minds.
Michael. I love Michael.
He was the star of that episode. Every scene you do is with Chris Maloney. I'm sorry, you've arrived.
Yes. Well, Michael, Michael is one of those people who has worked his butt off, so deserving, so talented, and so generous with his time and energy and his spirit. I'm so happy for him and all the success that's coming through. He was on the podcast earlier. I think it was in the fall.
I saw that. I haven't listened to his episode yet, but I did see that he was on.
Yeah.
I don't know him, but it's like, it's evidence.
Yeah.
You see, I know of him. We haven't met, but
Yeah.
We sort of all, every single time I say that, there's been plenty of local actors that I'm Facebook friends with or Instagram friends with, and then we meet in person. I'm like, I can't believe we haven't met yet. And they're like, it doesn't matter. It is. It's like we've already known each other forever. And it is. Anyone's win is all of our win because it just proves that it's possible.
Yeah, especially when you build these little communities, right?
Yes.
Because when you see the people that you're coming up with start succeeding, then you're like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yep.
We can all do it.
We can. Well, and I also always love to take to heart, I did a songwriting workshop years ago, and the woman there always said, she was talking about moving to Nashville, and when you move to Nashville and those first people you meet and whatever, she's like, you graduate with your class.
Yeah.
The people that you come up with, the people that you're working with and learning with and leaning on, when they start to succeed, you are going to also. If you've all been in the trenches together all this time, it's just a thing that starts to happen.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that. I have this accountability group that I'm in with Marilyn and some other people, and it's like we all now have representation, whereas before not everyone did. We're all sort of getting auditions. It's just, you really do start to see how we're all just manifesting this thing collectively. And that's what keeps us going, because a win for anybody is a win for all of us.
That's wonderful. Well, what do you look forward to as you continue to grow in your craft and age into this career that you have started over?
All the things. I look forward to just getting to a place in my life where some of the basic things that I never was able to attain because I didn't have any sort of stability in what I was pursuing. So there was no opportunity to really raise money or do what I don't, have my own house or apartment. I live with my mom. I would, which is fine, which is great. She puts up with me, but it would be lovely to get to a place where I've got the stability and the success to sort of branch out of my own. But I also really, the idea of, in the past year, sort of really since the beginning of the pandemic, I've just started to explore this sort of content creation idea, even when it's just silly things like Common Sense Connie or, the Real Actresses or just a one-off of whatever. It teaches you how to start to do it, and so the idea of doing bigger and better things. And I look at people like Mindy Kaling and I think that's the goal, to be able to have that kind of control where you get to be in the project or just run the project.
Yeah.
and create things and to be, I'm a fat lady. I want to see more fat ladies in
Yeah.
lead roles. I don't want to only have to, and I'm a little too old to maybe be the romantic lead, but then again,
Why not?
there are stories that can be told about every age, like,
what's the show on HBO? Oh my God, why can't I think of it right now?
It's all
It's
right.
Jay
It'll
Duplantis,
come to
the
you.
producer on it.
Oh, I
And it is
love those Duplass boys.
called, I know,
Somebody Somewhere?
Somebody Somewhere. Yes.
Oh, it's Bridget Everett. Yes,
Bridget,
okay.
yes, thank you. I'm telling you, my brain is not functioning because I'm sick. But Somebody Somewhere.
No, that's okay.
That movie or that TV show is so great. And she is a big woman and
Yep.
she gets to have sex on the show.
Oh, I love
And
it.
she's like, you gotta watch. If you have not watched it, you need to watch it. It is so touching. And it's everybody on the show. They're just real people. Nobody is glamorous. Everybody's just real.
I love that. No, and that's the thing. It's like anytime I think like, well, who wants to watch this? I'm like, well, I do.
Yeah.
So I will then make it happen.
Yeah.
If it's not already out there, that's the way to do it.
Yes.
That's how to have representation.
Yeah.
Create what's missing.
Yeah. It's coming.
Because you're not your only audience.
It's coming. We just need more and more people. And I think the more that they let people kind of write this stuff and write their stories, the more. And I'd like to think that they're seeing that people are responding to it. People like it. I don't know if middle America is, but I know like my friends like it. I hope.
Yeah.
I hope everybody likes it.
Yeah.
But yes, change is coming. Let our voices be heard.
Is. Yeah. Well, we just have to do it ourselves, and sometimes it means, like you say, creating your own content. And that can be hard. That can be scary. But I mean, God, real actresses, it's stupid. It's reels. Everybody's using their self-tape equipment and doing their own thing. And then we're releasing it in 90-second sections. And, and it's like, I mean, people are responding to it.
Yeah.
And we just did it because we thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And so like at some point there'll be a different version of that. And it's like, whether it's a short film or whether it's, you create a series and you shoot it yourself and either it gains some traction, like what was it? Broad City, I think started out as just an internet thing. And then next thing you know, it's on actual television. Or if you decide to just be like, all right, nobody wants it, but we're going to put it on Patreon because we're not giving it away for free.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
There are ways to do it. So
I do love your common sense, Connie. I think she's great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I got to do more of her. It's been a minute.
Yeah. And you should do more of her. We might have to do a collaboration between Teresa and and Connie. Like I remember the first time I saw your Common Sense, Connie, I was like, oh, I think she and Teresa would get along really well.
Oh my God, I'm embarrassed that I don't know who Teresa is, but I'm looking that up immediately.
I have a character called Tips with Teresa. When we're done, go on to Instagram. Oh my God,
I'm going to binge.
You got to see. I do a bunch of little videos where it's just like Teresa giving tips. And I think we could do some sort of collaboration. We'll each film on our side. We'll edit it all together. And
I'm in.
Like, I'm going to give a tip. You got the common sense. Like...
Oh my God.
I think it could be really funny. So you got to watch it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me ask you one last question. We got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay. What does making it mean to you now versus when you were younger? So what does success look like to you?
Oh my gosh. Well, say when I was younger, it was all about like, I will have married Ralph Macchio and we have a mansion and we have horses.
Else they wanted to remarry
many dogs. Yeah.
I can't remember who it was. But
and and we work on movies together and whatever. Now, I mean, it's just making a living creatively in any way.
Yeah.
Is making it. I mean, and in that sense, I've already made it. Audiobooks are the bread and butter. And then if I get to do a movie or anything along the way and that adds to it, great.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, beyond that, it's like just being able to keep on doing it.
Yeah.
Is all I really need. I mean, do I want to be a series regular? Sure.
Absolutely.
Who doesn't?
Would
I take the mansion if it comes my way? Of course I would. Yeah. But I mean, no, it's really just about being able to keep doing it. And I'd love to get to the point. I did recently have this big, crazy, like daydream manifestation moment with myself where I thought, what would I do with $1 billion?
Yeah.
And it was like by the time I was done creating businesses that would help other people in all the ways we don't do it now, I was like, oh, I'm like basically governing the country. And I'm basically, but I'd be doing it through businesses, which I think would be super successful because they address many needs we don't have.
Yeah.
And if they were truly successful, other businesses would have no choice but to step up if they wanted to compete.
Yeah.
And they'd be like sort of contributing to social justice endeavors, maybe without wanting to, but they'd be like, it's the only way because everybody wants to work with this chick now, damn it. So like, yeah,
rats foiled by Niemi.
If it ever happens, I will do so much good.
Yes, I hear you. Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much for giving me your time
thank you.
and coming on the podcast. So where can people find you? I know everyone, you have to go to her Instagram to watch the real actresses of the East Coast. No, am I saying that right?
Hollywood East.
Hollywood East. There we go. Yes, you have to watch the series. Marilyn is also in that.
Yes, she is.
And so what is your Instagram handle? Where can people find you?
So my Instagram handle is Kimmy with a Y _ Niemi, which is spelled as my mom said on every phone call to any business growing up my entire life. N as in Nancy, I-E, M as in Mary, I. And on Facebook, I think if you just search on Kim Niemi, you'll find me.
Yeah.
I'm there. You'll see the pictures of me. Same on YouTube and whatnot. So
yes. Yeah. Well, this has been so wonderful. We will put the links. I can link your YouTube channel and the Instagram and all the things that you want in the show notes. It has been so lovely chatting with you. You were so charming and a great storyteller. So thank you so much for giving me your time.
Wouldn't shut up is what that's code for. No,
no, I did think, I was like, it must be like a Boston thing, like these Massachusetts folks are like great at telling stories, because I felt like same thing with Maryland, where it's just like, oh
my God.
Yeah.
We can go on at a clip. Yeah. That's for sure. No, well, I could see, it's funny because you can't see me, for anyone out there who doesn't know. I don't have a camera on because I'm using my wacky recording setup, but I could see you. So every now and again I was like, oh, no, she's trying to get in there. Shut up, Kim. So, I was like, yes, I defer.
Yeah, that's all right.
To Lisa.
That's all right. I try to let the guest do most of the speaking, But anyway, all right. Well, thank you so much. Have a good night, and we'll talk soon. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. You can follow Kim and check out her content on Instagram at Kimmy_Niemi, and that's Kimmy with 2 M's and a Y. Or you can follow her YouTube page at Kim Niemi, one word, or check out her website. As usual, I will link all of this in the show notes so you can find her on whatever platform you prefer. If you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen, and share it with your friends on social media. Word of mouth is the best marketing. Be sure to follow the show on Instagram at Making It After 40, the number 40. And to see what I'm up to when I'm not podcasting, check out my Instagram at Lisa Rodriguez. Thank you all for listening, and have an excellent week.